Hey, guess what time it is, boys and girls? It's time for the tip of the week. Hey, what's going on, YouTube? It's Volsa. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Oath of Stormpeak and how it's changing the nature of warfare in Call of Dragons these days. So what's the Oath of Stormpeak? Well, this is the artifact that is designed for Frondel. It came out, I think, in the third season. What it does is when you charge it up, it summons a clone of your legion. If it's a Cav legion, you're going to get a full rage bar instantly. And then, hopefully the enemy doesn't know which is the clone legion and which is the real legion. It causes a bit of confusion. The clone legion fights for a little bit, does a little damage. Like I said, if it's a Cav legion, it gets a full rage bar, so it gets its rage cycle off. And then it goes away after about 10 seconds or so. It was never a very popular artifact for Cav marches. Most Cav players would use some sort of burst damage artifact like, Kingslayer or something like that. But a couple seasons ago, players started figuring out a way to abuse this system. And basically what they do is they use the Oath of Stormpeak on a Cav Legion. They charge it up, not at the front lines, but just behind the front lines. And then send the Clone Legion, and only the Clone Legion, into the enemy lines to do whatever damage it could in this short period of time. The devs put a partial fix in for that. What they did is said if you charge this up on a Darkling Legion, whatever the clone ends up hitting, you're not going to get any merits from that. But of course, you put in that fix, players figure out a way around it, and the enemy we're fighting in our current season, they figured out a good way to circumvent that. So what they'll do is they'll take, a legion from their kingdom, but not in their warband, and park it just outside of the front lines, usually in a resource node or something like that. And this charge-up legion, if you will, is usually a very defensive legion. Maybe it's like a Garwood Eliana, or maybe it's literally just gatherers. And so they'll have their Cav legion hit this dummy legion for a few seconds, charge up the artifact, and then move their legion forward, trigger the clone. The clone comes in, does whatever damage it can do, and then their legion falls back. There's a couple issues with this. The first issue is the Clone Legion, because it's a clone, you the cloning player, take no sev wounds, right? But any damage you do to the enemy does inflict sev wounds on them. At the same time, you get merits for inflicting damage. Your clone gives you merits. But if the enemy kills the clone, they don't get any merits, right? So it's all upside. You get merits, you get no sev wounds other than whatever trivial amount you take charging up the artifact. The enemy gets sev wounds but no merits. The other thing, this has gotten worse, is because of the Exemplar system. It used to be 10 seconds the clone would last, but with the Exemplar you can get up to 12 seconds. And that may not seem like a ton, but a 20% increase is actually pretty significant when we're dealing with these margins. Okay, last thing about this. I think this is really terrible gameplay, but it is 100% legitimate gameplay. This is not cheating. This is a mechanic in the game. And even like alliances that are abusing this to a great degree, they're not doing anything wrong, right? They're using the tools in front of them. Honestly, this reminds me a lot of the barricade system. Barricades were a legitimate tool in the game. They were also terrible to play against and made the game incredibly unfun. I think the Oath of Stormpeak is getting to that realm. The alliances using it aren't doing anything wrong, but I really think the devs need to address this. This concludes Volsa's Tip of the Week.